Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is Tim.
And do you mind if we record this for my podcast?
And not at all. Not at all.
Cool.
That's what we're doing. Tim's, of course, referencing the movie we're about to talk about. This is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we've watched a horror movie, we sit and we talk about it. It's that simple. This episode is going to be about a Norwegian film called Lake of Death, which has been presented to much of the English-speaking world as a Shudder exclusive or original. So that's where we watched it, and that's where most of you can find it at least. Although, admittedly, we might have listeners in various places. If you're in Norway, you might have seen this at the theaters. And you know, I pity you, quite frankly. So yes, we'll talk about Lake of Death. And we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. The film is directed by Nini Robsahm, and also written by the same person. So we'll get into it in just a minute. But I will just ask you, if you like the show before we start, remember to hit the like button on YouTube, because it's really important. It's a nice, easy, and cheap way of supporting us, and it lets more people find us on YouTube, and our audience can grow. So please do that. Thank you. I shall now stop shilling and start with the review. So the premise of Lake of Death is that the main character of Lillian lost her brother at this lake a year ago. They're both adults, of course. This is not like kids. We're talking about adults. And a year later...
And we literally mean, like, lost. Like, he kind of just went walking in the woods.
and never came back, so he's presumed dead. And a year later, she's going back with her boyfriend and a couple of friends to spend the weekend or whatever at this cabin on the lake, because they're going to sell the cabin soon, and her boyfriend thinks that, hey, going back to that cabin once more would be good for her. I'm not sure I agree with that. She did lose her brother there. That seems like a bad idea to me, but whatever, not want to judge.
Different culture, I guess.
She also seems to have another boyfriend who she knew at the time her brother disappeared, and seems to be more in love with. The boyfriend who's there with her on the journey seems to kind of be just sort of hoping that he's going to like win her by going on this trip. The whole thing was very... Because at first I was confused as to who the second guy was, and I was like, what is he to her? I was like, oh no, he is the boyfriend, the love interest. Okay, so what's the first guy then? Oh, he's hoping to be the love interest, but is failing miserably. Okay, alright. We'll go with it. So they go and spend the week at the lake, and she starts having visions of people with like goo coming out of their eyes, and there's lots of creepy little jump scare things happening.
A lot of, if you like Venom, this is kind of the unofficial sequel.
And eventually people, of course, start turning up dead and dying, and of course there's reveals to be had and things to sort of discover as the movie goes on. That is the premise of Lake of Death.
There's a lake.
There is a lake, yes. Which we hear early on. There's all sorts of stories about the lake being cursed, and people who died in it coming back to life, or people being killed in it because of what they are, and just all sorts of stories, which we'll get into a bit more in spoilers when we actually talk about the details. But Tim, how did you feel about this terrible movie, Lake of Death?
I loved it. I thought it was one of the best. I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily say terrible, but it's definitely not good. For sure. I'm not sure. I didn't really know much about it going in. I forget if this was one we had seen the trailer before, because the title did sound kind of familiar. But I was thinking it was gonna be like maybe something like a cheesier slasher movie or something. So I was a little more hopeful, and then watching it, and I thought it was kind of boring. I didn't really care about the characters. Like, I was kind of more into the idea of like the guy that's like doing like a podcast and wants to hear about like these creepy legends and stuff, and that stuff kind of got me on board a bit. But then it's quickly not about that, and kind of just devolves into generic supernatural stuff, like you're talking about. Like that black goo is just, I feel like it's just not that interesting. It just seems like kind of crappy like goo effects that we've seen done in other movies, and doesn't really look good. And then
generic trash might be a phrase for it.
Sure. And then, like, you know, not to go into like, obviously, yeah, won't go into spoilers yet, but once you kind of find out, you know, like in the last act about what's going on, I didn't like it. I couldn't have cared less. And then also, like, you know, in terms of horror stuff, like you know, there wasn't really like any cool deaths, or at least anything like that, you know, sometimes, you know, in a movie's bad, but you can kind of be like, but I did like this one scene that had good gore or something like that. There's not even really anything like that going on here. So yeah, yeah, I would say I didn't like it.
Good, because if you had been remotely positive on this, I would have fought you. I would have thrown you into the lake of death, and never looked back. Quite frankly, this movie is like it. The music, the look of it, it's so early 2000s. Like it has that like, oh, this dark past is like coming to haunt you kind of plot, and it like it looks and feels like the early 2000s. It's so tropey. All the supernatural kind of visions in the first like 2/3 of the movie, I hated. They're all just like they're ripped out of other movies. There's literally a scene in the bathtub where it does the shot from Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's just looking at her from, you know, down the wire. It does it repeatedly. There's awkward references to other horror. Stop reminding me of better horror. At one point they find like a basement in the cabin, and like, hey, let's go down there. Oh, it's just like Evil Dead. What? Don't bring up Evil Dead that awkwardly. It's just stupid.
No, there was like at one point where I guess like early on, maybe I had like a little bit of hope that because once they did actually start making references to like Nightmare on Elm Street and Evil Dead, and like, yeah, it has kind of like this creepy, you know, cabin that I was starting to wonder, like, oh, are we gonna get maybe like an interesting like kind of meta horror film where it's talking about that stuff? But no, it's totally not. It's just like, yeah, just very like, you know, bland references. Like,
yeah, there's a few very awkward and clunky references, including to Cabin Fever of all things. Are we at a point now where the original Cabin Fever is old enough that there's filmmakers who are like, oh, we grew up on Cabin Fever, we want to reference Cabin Fever?
I guess
that is sad and depressing in so many levels. So many levels. First of all, get better taste. Secondly, we got old. Those are the two levels. Those are the two levels that I'm upset about. No, I thought this was painfully generic, devoid of anything. The pacing was awful. The way it was kind of going through these creepy moments, I did not like any of the characters. I thought the exposition early on about the lake was so clunky. How it was just, all right, can you tell us about the lake for my podcast? And then he just sits there and tells like multiple stories about people disappearing, about what happened, the story of this old guy who went nuts back in the 1920s. Like, it's just like, there's too much. Dial it back, make it more kind of sinister and creepy and undertones, and it's just like I hate the characters. I hate the people. Everything about the main character Lillian. I thought she was like the opposite of like sympathetic. Like the whole time, she just has this face that just screams like I'm trying to be mopey while acting, and it did not work for me at all.
Well, I mean, well, let's not like, you know, disparage like how her face looks or anything, but
I'm not disparaging how her face looks. I'm disparaging her acting. I'm not saying her face at a default setting is anything irregular about it. I'm saying she's trying to be the serious mopey actor who's always like she's her past is like tormented her, and she's guilty about her brother's disappearance, and she doesn't know what to do. And no.
Maybe like blame yeah. I mean, I'm sure she's like a fine actress, but maybe blame the director or something.
Are you sure? Are you really sure, Tim? What makes you sure?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know her that well.
You're saying it's possible.
Sure.
Not sure. You're not sure of anything.
Okay.
No one's sure of anything. Not in this movie.
I think. I mean, I don't know. I think sometimes it's also like a little harder to tell if the acting's bad when it's like a foreign film. Like I don't know. I don't speak the language and stuff. Maybe like I don't know, some of the ways they're emoting or something is maybe like a little lost. But
I mean,
I don't know.
the way they deliver lines, maybe I can definitely see what you're saying, but when it's just facial reactions, I don't think so. When it's facial reactions, that's universal. That doesn't, like, the language doesn't matter.
She's like I'd agree with you that like she is like, I mean, at the very least, like, yeah, she's just kind of a boring main character. Like, I don't know, I guess no one in the movie is too likable, but
no one's likable.
At least like the other people are I would say like slightly more interesting, but
like there's a problem when your supposedly sympathetic main character goes past, like, isn't remotely sympathetic and crosses a line into actively being annoying for being so depressing all the time. Where I'm like, I don't care about this character. I'm annoyed that she's so depressed. Like, that's how consistently she is like that.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, like she is like it does feel like a fundamental flaw of the movie that like her friends are kind of dragging her back to the place where like her brother like disappeared. I forget.
It's shockingly not even really brought up that much once they're there. Like, it's set up and then she never really, like, no one is like, hey, maybe she's having a hard time because of where we are. Instead it's like, oh, she's sleepwalking and maybe she's doing weird stuff on her sleepwalking trips.
And like and again, we'll talk about it more in like spoilers, but ultimately all this stuff they're kind of like talking about like ends up not really being important.
Yeah, the first two-thirds of the film are meaningless. The first two-thirds of the film are a lie, basically. And not because it's a fun twist. They're just a lie.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And there's so many bullshit tropey moments. Like, how many times in this movie does someone walk past the camera in the foreground when the camera's behind someone, only for them to turn around and go, oh, was there someone there? Oh, well, maybe not. I guess not then. I'll go back to my jigsaw puzzle. I hated this movie. I hated this with every fiber of my being. This was trash. This was garbage. Garbage.
I mean, I do like that it inspires so much hate from you. That is at least entertaining.
This was worse than The Boy. You can quote me on that.
Well, yeah. Well, obviously.
Well, not obviously. Come on, it's not obvious.
Well, I mean, The Boy's good, and this is not a good movie, so.
I don't know. I mean, maybe rethink your opinions or something.
Right, yeah, you as well.
But you mainly.
But also, you.
But I think you're at the root of the problem here is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah, well, not when it comes to The Boy, though.
Especially when it comes to The Boy.
I don't know about that.
I'm pretty sure about it.
It's a popular film on Netflix.
I don't trust Netflix's rating systems to tell me anything. How dare you? No. Right. Where were we? Yes. You're being oddly. You're trying to be, I don't know, diplomatic about this movie for some reason. And I don't know why. I like everything about this is everything I hate about early 2000s horror movies. It's the bullshit fake out jump scares. It's the overly kind of CG like supernatural stuff that we're seeing. The characters are annoying and just bicker. They like there's a whole thing early on where they get up for breakfast and like there's this like fancy table made up and there's all this breakfast food laid out. And they all kind of realize one by one that none of them actually did this. So who did it? Who set up breakfast? Who put all this food out? And it just like the scene just kind of frustrated me because I'm like, this could be a creepy little realization here. This could be something where they all kind of go, oh, what's going on? That's kind of weird. That's kind of creepy. And then it just becomes a thing. Oh, let's blame Lillian because she sleepwalks. She must have done this when she was sleepwalking. Like, yeah, sure. That's what happened.
I think that is a good point. Like, I didn't really think about it as I was watching, but I can see what you mean. Like I didn't make the comparison of it as being like an early 2000s movie, but I can definitely like see that.
Yeah. I just it feels like it's like of an era of movie that we left behind because not because its time had passed, but because it was always bad.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. It's it's boring and again like the I mean I'm trying to remember if there was even any like at least good like gore or death scenes and like that. That really wasn't like there. There isn't even anything like that you can kind of grasp onto like along those lines or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. There really isn't much there.
Nope. I mean, are we at the point where we have to talk about spoilers, so I can just rip it to shreds? Because I don't mind doing that. I really don't.
I guess we can. I mean, I don't really have much to say about it. I mean, I didn't like it. I guess. I don't know. Ultimately, I just thought it was like kind of bad, but I guess it didn't inspire as much hate from me. But I mean, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. It is a very bad movie.
I was painfully bored throughout this because it was so bad, and I got to that point where by the 30-minute mark, I knew how much I hated it, and the last hour or so was just painful. It was just how much time is left. How much time is left? Nothing was working, and then the last 20 minutes pulled what the last 20 minutes pulled, and it was like, well, now I'm even more annoyed because I feel like my time was especially wasted for the rest of the movie. So yeah, okay. So thank you to our Patreon producers for the month: Alison M. Fordyce, Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, if I speak properly, David Short, Board Now, and Zammer Jammer. They are all patron producers, meaning they're $20 or up patrons. You can, of course, support us on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month, however. And for that $1, you'll get an exclusive extra episode of the show every month. There's a back catalogue now of about 20 episodes, so you get access to a whole bunch of stuff. Plus, you get extra stuff from other shows, too. $5 tier and up, you get access to the shows a day early. And you also, of course, get to vote once per month. So go and have a look and see if you want to keep all the content coming and show your support on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. So, full spoilers from this point forth for Lake of Death. What are you itching to say?
I was just gonna say, don't forget about our ultimate tier, where for $350 I will go out walking into the woods and disappear.
Do you know what I love? We recorded this in the last episode back to back, so Tim's almost like setting up that he's got a running joke that he's going to carry forward from episode to episode, but I guarantee you he's going to forget that he's done this next week and it'll never appear again. It'll be in the beach house in Lake of Death and then it'll never pop up again.
Oh, we'll see.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if he remembers about the ultimate tier next week. So, okay. I guess we start at the end because we have to talk about where it goes. Well, the movie starts actually with a flashback. It starts with a flashback of Lillian and her brother Bjorn on a little boat in the lake the year prior, and the brother doesn't speak. He's deaf, so he's doing sign language, and he's got like a necklace for her. And I actually thought, I didn't realize they were brother and sister. This felt kind of, I don't know, like a hopeless sort of romantic try to like win the girl over kind of thing, and it kind of ends in a sort of downbeat because she's saying that she has to go. She's going with her boyfriend, and she'll always be with him. And she does. I think she mentions that they're siblings in the scene, so you know before the end of the scene that that's what it is. But and then it cuts to the present day, and whatever. At the end of the movie, we actually get the rest of the flashback that they didn't show us at the start, which is that he actually tries to sexually assault her, so if you like incest, I mean, the movie's got a little bit of that going for it, I suppose.
Okay.
If you're a fan.
Sure.
I know you're out there. But he does that, and when she's fighting back, she hits him in the head with the oar, and he falls into the lake and sinks. And she actually is under the assumption this past year, so every time she's sort of feeling guilty about the fact that she lost her brother, she's actually feeling guilty that she thinks she killed him. She thinks and she doesn't go to rescue him because it's established throughout the film that she can't swim. So he sinks to the bottom seemingly, and that's that. But of course,
why were they on the lake in the first place?
Because it's a nice, calm, romantic setting for a brother and sister to exchange romantic gifts.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, it's very one-sided. I really hated this reveal. It's just like so gross. Him forcing himself on her and stuff, and yeah, it's very very unpleasant. I mean, obviously, like, that stuff's never fun to watch or whatever, but I don't know, something about it like felt like especially like kind of gross and icky in this movie.
It's it feels like it's going for cheap shock value, I think, is my sort of read on it more than anything else. It's
totally, yeah.
Yeah, because they mentioned throughout the film that they were orphans, and she kind of like left him as a kid to go to a family and left him at the orphanage. So she's kind of been kind of shitty to him her whole life. But he obviously has a very unhealthy attraction to her. It's but the big twist of the movie though, that's kind of context after we've had the twist. But the twist is that the person killing people is in fact her brother Bjorn, which isn't even that surprising because as far as we know throughout the whole movie, he was just never found. Like he just went missing. So it's actually not that shocking that he's around. In fact, we find out that he's living in the basement in a bed, and I'm like, this is basically the same twist as the boy.
No.
You think it's supernatural, but no, he's just living in the house. It's just a person. He's there.
I think that's like very different.
It's what they're talking about. It's the same goddamn twist.
Well, there's a lot of movies that do that though. It's not like there's a lot more context to the boy. Like this is just like
okay.
I don't know. It's like out of nowhere, and because again, like the whole movie is I don't know. It's like talking about this lake, and she's having like these weird visions and like all this like shit that doesn't matter.
This is constant. She's constantly having visions of people like bleeding goo from their eyes. She's constantly having visions of the one guy with the like the sort of the black sort of like veins sort of growing in his chest, and all of it is like what are they trying to say? She's sort of clairvoyant and she's predicting things for later. Like none of it actually matters to what's actually going on.
Yeah,
it feels so cheap.
What's the point?
It feels so cheap once you find out. No, it's just her brother running around killing people.
And like, and it felt like maybe, there might have been something more to it if like they were talking about the brother more, or like it had been like a bigger thing. Like, they do mention him throughout the movie, but I don't know. It still didn't feel like he was much of a presence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it feels like one of those things where they really wanted to have this dramatic family backstory, and it's this sort of revenge style kind of plot, but the movie feels so far gone from it, where it's trying to do this thing where it's like a mystery of who's doing these things and is it supernatural. Who tied up the dog, because the dog gets tied up at one point.
Who made breakfast?
Yeah, Lillian keeps sleepwalking to the point where they start taking shifts like guarding the house at night, just in case she gets up and like does anything suspicious or anyone else is coming into the house. And like I just felt like, and there's so much bickering between the podcast guy and the guy who's dating the blonde that it just gets really annoying, them accusing each other of things like, oh, you're doing this for your podcast, you're setting up all this creepy stuff up so that we all we all react accordingly. And honestly, the whole thing, the only time the brothers really brought up properly is that they find his journal, that the podcast guy finds the journal, and he reads what he was writing and all these like creepy drawings. And I mean, I guess
it's like the generic like creepy journal that people like discover.
Yeah,
like, no one ever really has like actual journals like that.
Yeah, scratchy drawings of things and all the other tropes. And I guess the movie's still kind of implying that the lake is supernatural, and it's maybe what drove him mad, and it's maybe what's giving her supernatural visions. But honestly, it's just so trite, and it doesn't focus on any one specific idea. Like, there's just the simple things in a movie that I really appreciate. It's, okay, characters are in this predicament, they realize they're in a predicament, and they take proactive measures to try and get themselves out of it. But this movie, like, there's so much wishy-washy of like them not realizing the stuff's going on, and then once they sort of maybe have an inkling that something is, they just kind of blame it on one of them. Like, horror movie characters being ignorant in the face of like evidence of something happening is so like infuriating. And it's never fun. It never works. It's never enjoyable to actually sit through. It never makes me root for the characters. It never makes me want them to survive.
It does feel strange that like so many movies, it feels like the go-to thing is to have like, friends kind of like argue and bicker among themselves, when it's like it's usually more enjoyable like when you see like, friends are like friends with each other. Yep. Instead of like, constantly like getting into fights and shit.
Working together, stuff like that. And if you're going to have conflict, then set it up and make it feel like it's paying off something. There's nothing about the conflict between the two characters in this movie that's remotely entertaining or satisfying. It's not like you can see both sides of their argument. They both just feel like they're both bickering idiots. One of them especially, the boyfriend dude, feels especially like he just wants to blame someone, so he's just picking the podcast guy to be the scapegoat. Yeah. But it's just unpleasant. There's just nothing about them that are that likable. And then it has like a montage of them getting high and stuff when they're deciding to make up, and the whole thing just kind of feels like horror movies have scenes like this, so we're going to put these scenes in our movie. And I don't know. I just the whole thing. I don't like how it looks. I don't like how it feels. I don't like the characters. I don't like the supernatural, like scary elements of the bullshit jump scares of things walking past the camera, or the music stings or whatever. I don't like any of that. I don't like the actual twist or what it does at the end with the reveal of the brother. I don't think the brother's that intimidating or exciting when you do discover it's him. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, like he just looks like a normal guy and stuff, and like, yeah, like at least if you are gonna go this direction, if you maybe turn him into a slasher with like, maybe like, he has like a crazy mask or like a signature weapon, like, it still wouldn't have been good, but at least maybe then, yeah, it could have been like, funner or a little cheesier or something. But yeah, nothing like that. It's just, again, it's just kind of dull.
This movie is taking itself so seriously.
Yeah. And then like when you do find out about it's the brother or whatever, and then they start like having those quick little flashbacks where like you see him like in like, different places and stuff. Like I was trying to understand if like, I was like, all right, wait, do other people know that he's like here now that they're showing these scenes or whatever? Or was he like hiding and not being noticed? Because he's in like plain sight, of like a lot of these things. And I don't know, it's just strange.
Also, not that many people actually die. Only two of the characters actually die. The boyfriend and the boyfriend guy of the blonde, right? His name was Harold, and then the sort of the wannabe boyfriend of Lillian, Gabriel. They're the only two that actually die, because the podcast on the blonde actually end up like surviving because they're there at the end, and then Kai, who's like the guy she's really into, who disappears early on in the film, not mysteriously, he just he has to go do like work or something and whatever he's doing.
He's like the one person that has like stayed here, I guess, in this area, while everyone I don't know where everyone else is from, but
and he's like one of the lead suspects in a lot of ways, because he's been absent and like maybe he's up to something, but he's actually been held kidnapped by the brother for most of the movie. But at the end, 4 of them have survived, so it's not even like there's a big body count, which would be fine if it actually was an engrossing like movie about its, if the story was actually entertaining and we cared about the realizations that she has and fighting back, that'd be fine. But at this point, because the movie's so bad, we're just kind of hoping for at least a cheesy movie with a lot of kills would be better than this. Like it.
And I'll be totally honest with you. I only watched this. I mean, like, less than 2 days ago, but like I don't even remember how the people died. Like, I don't know.
Well, you don't really see much of it, honestly. Like
it's I like that. Yeah, I think that does sound familiar, because I think like most of anything is like off camera.
Yeah, like if you they find the bodies, there's not a whole lot that happens when they actually die.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, this movie is like super forgettable.
Oh, it is.
I think.
Like, I was actually thinking after I watched this, that if for some reason, let's say like one of our internets went down today or something, and we couldn't record, I would be terrified of having to talk about this in a few days' time, because even right after I watched, I was like, I am going to forget so much of this movie. I was so zoned out in the middle of this film when it was just doing the same things of her sleepwalking and everyone being suspicious and, oh, what's happening? Oh, where's the dog? Oh, the dog's tied up. Well, okay, do we accuse each other of who's doing this? It's a tedious watch that this was everything. This is like all the things I don't like about horror movies in one movie. It really was. It was like so many of the things that I dislike all wrapped up into one. And the ending, when it's doing all its revelations, and it's like, hey, it's the brother the whole time, and we see like shots of him walking out the water from when she thought he drowned, but he actually just came out fine.
Yeah.
And maybe it's supernatural. Maybe the lake kind of kept him alive to go kill people or something. I don't know, but
yeah, I mean, if they are trying to go for something like that, it doesn't really feel like super clear or whatever. There's not really much to this movie. I think maybe if I had any anything is kind of positive. I might have maybe been a little more hopeful in the beginning, because I like when they're talking about the legend of the lake, it's like, well, all right, I do like legends and folklore kind of stuff, so I'm like, all right, maybe I can get into that. And then I don't know, like early on, I was like, all right, maybe, like I do kind of like the the cabin, like it's giving me like a little bit of like Evil Dead vibes, just I don't know, just kind of like from the look at it. So early on, I was like, all right, maybe we'll get some cool creepy stuff, but then yeah, I mean, pretty quickly after that, like you said, it just kind of divulges into typical generic supernatural bullshit that we've seen a million times before. All like the kind of like visions of like the black goo kind of stuff. Like, I joked about Venom before, but it does seem like really crappy, like symbiote, like I don't know, effects that you would see in Spider-Man. Like
the bathtub scene where the bathwater all turns into the goo and she's sort of splashing around and being scared. Like just scenes like that are just tedious to sit through because it's a vision, it's not real. I just I hated this movie. I hated all of it, and I like there's very little to say at this point. Like I have no real like, it's not even good bad, not even good bad, hon. Right? So there's multiple types of bad movie. There's fun bad, right? Which this is definitely not. And then there's just bad, right? But even bad, there's like subcategories where there's other bad movies where I hate so much and I can actually go through the plot beat for beat and like rage about all the choices that it made. This movie, it just all blurs together in such a way that I can't even give you good talking points on it because it was this just blur in my mind. Once I actually get into the supernatural stuff, it's just like, okay, there's an hour of this shit. Like that's kind of it, and then. The last 20 minutes are there, the opening 20 minutes are there, and there's an hour in the middle that is just
it's super forgettable. No one's really likable, and then the big twist just like doesn't really work, and then it's like I don't know, my cat's tail's going in my water. Oh Jesus. And then it's like it does really annoy me when a movie has to go like the sexual assault route. Like it's gross to see. It's not like it's not like it should never be done. Like if if you can find a way to do it in the story that makes sense and it's important, but like it's just such a gross, unpleasant thing that
I'm not so sure what it added to this movie, especially since it doesn't get brought up until the end, and there's nothing from before it that makes me think. Like that was always like the like in her head that this happened with her brother, like and it never.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, like if anything, it's probably just for like shock value or whatever, and it's like I mean I feel like it's kind of like such like a grimy, sleazy thing that I feel like we're kind of past that
like
now.
I wonder if it's like this strategic thing where they wanted her to have like seen him die. But they didn't want everyone to like think she was in the wrong because she didn't actually try and save him or she killed him. So it's like, okay, so how do we make people feel that she's in the right? Well, okay, we'll have him try this awful thing, and it's set of an accident in the heat of the moment that does it. Like, it doesn't feel like it has like a whole big thing to say about anything here. It is just there purely for the character plot beat and shock value. So there's very little to sort of justify it, I guess.
Yeah, and then like on top of all that bad stuff, like again, there isn't even any like like cool kills or anything that you can at least point to that when you're kind of grasping at straws trying to find things that you like, and there really isn't anything like that going on here.
Yeah, no, it looks like a movie that Sony produced in 2003 and has the writing nuance of A Darkness Falls or something like it's a concoction of a lot of things of that era. So I think at this point we're in danger of just repeating ourselves. So this one's going to be a shorter episode. I think I'm just going to say, Tim, what are you rating it?
It's tough because I mean obviously it's going to be low. And I feel like it's so forgettable. Like I feel like I didn't have a lot of hate coming in because honestly I just didn't really like remember that much. But as like we're talking about it, it is like oh yeah, there really is nothing here. And um, I feel like a movie like this, like it kind of when you're talking about something that just there really isn't anything there, you know, you kind of start from the bottom and then kind of like say like, okay, like what's here that can like what can I give a point for here or here or here? And yeah, there really isn't much. Again, yeah, I can't really think of too many positives or even like generic stuff that's like, well, I mean, this wasn't bad. Again, maybe if I was given like some mild compliments, is just maybe in the beginning there I was a little more hopeful, but that I don't know, there could be some cool stuff, but I don't know, there really isn't. So I guess maybe just a 2, and I guess it's just because like, you know, we talked about this kind of before, but there's like, you know, it's watchable like in terms of like, you know, the camera was pointed at the people that are talking and like, you know, it wasn't completely shrouded in darkness. Like, you know, there's basic technical competency there that makes it enough to watch. But yeah, I can't really think of anything else too positive about it. I mean, I guess maybe my one positive is that you hated it, so I do like to see you in pain. So, but other than that,
I mean, yeah, I guess I this movie frustrates me because I don't even have anything that interesting to say about it. It's
Sure,
a complete sinkhole of despair because at least I can't even get good conversation out of it. I'm sitting here like an asshole on a podcast talking about a movie that has a podcaster in it, and I can't muster any interesting conversation because the movie's just that goddamn bland. It looks so bland. I hate how this movie looks. I mean, from a technical point of view, yeah, it looks like a movie. It's not a movie that I like the look of by any means, but you know, it doesn't feel amateur in that sense. But it feels very kind of crappy mainstream Hollywood from the early 2000s, and I hate that era of horror. I hate it. not to say that there's not good horror movies from that time, but I hate that mainstream feel stuff from that time. So I have to agree with a 2 out of 10. And I'm not going lower just because I've established in the past what a 1 is or what a 0 is. So this gets a 2. Yeah, you know what, if we're going to be crossing off more of these Shudder movies, I hope this is the low end because goddamn, it can't get much worse. Not for me.
yeah,
I'll take something laughably bad over this any day of the week. Any day.
sure.
So there you go. That's Lake of Death. If you made it this far in the review, feel free to put in the word in the comments. Goo. Put the word goo in the comments.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Tim, to pose for the thumbnail. So Tim, if you could lean back so your head's not cut off at the top. 3, 2, 1, pose. All right. Yes. A little bit misleading, but that's okay. So, yeah, that's been the discussion. That's been the review. I really don't recommend it in any form to anyone. So, avoid Lake of Death like the goddamn plague. So that has been the show. You can let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, as we mentioned earlier. It's super important. As is patreon.com/MailFuzzTV if you want to support us financially. You go check it out. Get us on Twitter at Screams Midnight for updates on the show. Obviously, we're monthly live stream that we'll be doing, at least for the foreseeable future, whilst we're above a certain goal on Patreon. We'll be back for streams after midnight sometime in late August. Yes, we did the July one. July 1 we watched Slumber Party Massacre on stream and we chatted, and it was an amusing time, so maybe you'll enjoy future streams. But that is pretty much us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.